There is a number in the title of this video, and I already know what half of you thought when you saw it. You thought it was a stretch, a headline, something a gold salesman puts on a screen to get your blood moving. And I want to be honest with you right out of the gate, because that reaction is not foolish. It is the correct instinct for a careful person. But it is also, I think, the exact instinct that the big banks and the financial channels are counting on. Because as long as you believe a big gold target can only be hype, you will never ask the one question that actually matters. Not how high can the price go, but what would have to change underneath the money for a number like that to become ordinary. If you have $100,000 or more sitting in a 401k or an IRA, this is not a spectator sport for you. This is your retirement, your savings, the thing you spent 40 years building. And the case I want to walk you through today is not built on excitement. It is built on history, on mechanism, and on something that has already happened to the world once before, in the lifetime of a lot of the people watching. By the time we are done, you will understand where the truly enormous gold targets actually come from. Not from a good year, from a rewrite of the rules. So let me give you the first real piece of this right away, because I do not believe in making you wait through 5 minutes of teasing before I put something solid in your hands. Here is the fact that changes how you see all of it. The biggest moves in the history of gold did not come from investors getting excited. They came from governments changing what a dollar was worth in gold overnight by decision. Not by the market drifting higher over years, by decree. A room of officials, a signature, and by the next morning, the value of gold measured in dollars was simply different. That is the thing nobody puts in the exciting headline, and it is the entire engine of this story. To understand it, you have to go back to the world your parents lived in after the Second World War. The nations of the earth sat down and built a system. They agreed that the American dollar would sit at the center of everything, and that the dollar itself would be anchored to gold at a fixed price. Every other currency was pegged to that dollar, and the dollar was pegged to metal. It was called the Bretton Woods system, named for the New Hampshire town where they signed it. And for a couple of decades, it worked. It gave the post-war world something priceless: certainty. You knew what your money was, because in the end, it was a claim on something real sitting in a vault. But here is what quietly went wrong, and it is the heart of everything I am telling you. A promise to trade dollars for gold at a fixed price only holds if you do not print too many dollars. And over the years, the United States printed and spent more than the gold behind it could honor. The math stopped working long before anyone admitted it out loud. Foreign governments began to notice. They started showing up, quietly at first, asking to trade their paper dollars for the gold they had been promised. And the vaults started to drain. The people in charge knew the truth years before they said it. They just kept smiling and insisting everything was fine. And this is where the enemy in this story first shows its face, because it is the same face you are looking at today. The institutions that manage the money always know the arrangement is breaking before you do. They have the data, they have the meetings, and their entire job in that window is to keep you calm and keep you holding the paper while they quietly prepare. They do not ring a bell. They do not send you a letter. The last thing a system in trouble wants is for ordinary savers to understand what is happening. Because if you understood, you would act. And if everyone acted at once, the game would end that afternoon. Now watch how it actually ended, because the ending is the whole lesson. In the early 1970s, the American president went on television and told the country he was closing the gold window. Temporarily, he said. The connection between the dollar and gold was being suspended, just for a while, to protect the country. It was never restored. That temporary suspension is now more than half a century old. And the moment that link was cut, the fixed price of gold was no longer fixed. It was free. And a metal that had been legally frozen at a low artificial number for decades was suddenly allowed to find out what it was really worth in a world with far more paper than gold. What happened next is the part one needs you to sit with. Gold did not climb politely. Over that decade, measured in dollars, it multiplied many times over. Not a nice annual return, a revaluation. The metal was not becoming more valuable in some cosmic sense. The dollar was being repriced against something that could not be printed. And that, right there, is the answer to the question in the title. The truly enormous gold numbers in history have never come from investors bidding a market up. They come from a moment when a broken monetary arrangement is finally admitted, and everything gets repriced against the one asset that was being held artificially cheap. And if you think that kind of overnight repricing is ancient history, let me take you back even further, because it happened right here in America. In the 1930s, in the depths of the Depression, the government revalued gold in a single stroke. The official dollar price of gold was lifted from around $20 an ounce to $35 by law overnight. That is roughly a 70% change in the value of gold against the dollar. And no investor did it. A signature did it. And in the same era, private citizens were ordered by executive order to hand in their gold. Ownership of it was made illegal. I tell you that not to frighten you, but to make one thing unmistakable. The rules sitting underneath your savings are policy. They are decisions, and decisions can be changed in a morning. And before we leave that era, I want to show you one more scene, because it is the clearest picture of how these systems actually die, and almost nobody remembers it. In the years just before the gold window was closed, a group of major nations formed what they called a gold pool. Their job was to defend the official price. Whenever the market threatened to push gold above the fixed number, these countries would sell their own reserves into the market to hold the line and keep the arrangement looking healthy. For a while, it worked. And then one day, the pressure was simply too great, and they gave up. They stopped defending the price and let it go. That is the pattern I need you to remember. A fixed arrangement does not gently fade. It is defended and insisted upon right up until the morning it is abandoned all at once. The confidence is loudest just before the break. And that is not only ancient history. Governments have sold gold at exactly the wrong moment in living memory. Not long ago, one major nation announced in advance that it would sell off a large share of its gold reserves, and it did so near what turned out to be a generational low, practically marking the bottom for everyone else. Think about who was on the other side of those sales. Patient buyers who understood that a government dumping gold out of a drawer is not a signal about gold, it is a signal about the government. The lesson threads through all of it. When the official world is selling metal to prop up confidence in paper, that is precisely the moment the careful individual should be paying the closest attention. Now, let me bring this all the way into the present, because the reason I am making this video is that the ingredients for exactly this kind of moment are assembling again, in plain sight, and the financial media is treating it as a footnote. Around the world, the central banks, the most conservative, slow-moving institutions on Earth, have been buying physical gold at a pace we have not seen in generations. For 3 years running, they bought more than 1,000 tons a year, roughly double the pace of the decade before. And even when that buying cooled off a little, it stayed far above anything considered normal. These are not day traders. These are the people who manage nations, and they are quietly trading paper reserves for metal. I want to pause here, because if any of this is landing for you, this is the moment to stop and think about your own position, not just admire the history. Here is something most retirees have never been told. Those same central banks that are loading up on gold have a legal option that, it turns out, is available to you too. There is a perfectly legal, established way for an ordinary American to move a portion of an existing retirement account into physical gold and silver, real metal held in your name, without triggering taxes and without paying an early penalty. It is called a self-directed precious metals IRA, and it uses the account you already have. This is not some exotic thing reserved for the wealthy or the connected. If you have $100,000 or more in any retirement account, this is squarely for you. I've put together a free retirement protection guide that walks through exactly how it works, in plain language. If you are watching this on your television, just scan the QR code on your screen. If you are on your phone or your computer, go to jeffreedguide.com. Take a look, then come right back, because the next part is where this really comes together. So why are the central banks doing this now, of all times? This is the part the headlines skip. A few years ago, one major power had its foreign currency reserves frozen by other nations, essentially with the press of a button. Its dollars and its holdings in foreign systems were locked. And every finance minister on Earth learned the same lesson at the same moment. Reserves held inside somebody else's system can be switched off. Gold sitting in your own vault cannot. It has no counterparty. Nobody can freeze it, sanction it, or print more of it. I am not making a political point here. I am telling you what the institutions concluded, and you can see it in what they are buying. And here is the tell that the old rules are already bending. For most of the last few decades, there was a reliable relationship. When interest rates on safe bonds rose, gold fell, because gold pays you nothing and a bond suddenly paid more. It was as close to a law as markets have. And in recent years, that relationship simply broke. Gold has climbed even while those real yields stayed high, which under the old rulebook is not supposed to happen. Why did it break? Because the buyer setting the price is no longer the trader chasing yield. It is the central bank buying tons of metal because it no longer fully trusts the system it used to rely on. When the marginal buyer changes, the old rules stop describing reality. And most people watching the financial channels are still using the old rulebook to judge a game that has already changed. There is even a milestone that tells you how far this has already gone, and almost nobody in the mainstream marked it. Gold recently passed a threshold where, among the reserves that central banks hold, it moved up past other major currencies to become one of the largest reserve assets on Earth, sitting behind only the dollar itself. Think about what that quietly says. The most conservative money managers in existence are voting, with real purchases, that metal deserves a bigger seat at the table than it has held in generations, since the very system I described at the start. They are not doing it because they are excited. They are doing it because they are worried, and their worry is far more informative than anyone's excitement. Now, let me speak plainly and honestly, the way I would to my own family, because I never want you to hear only one side from me. None of this is a promise. I cannot tell you gold will hit any particular number, and I will not, because anyone who gives you a price and a date is selling you certainty that does not exist. Gold is volatile. It has had brutal stretches inside every one of its great bull markets. In the middle of its huge 1970s run, it nearly cut in half before it went on to multiply many times over. And holders who panicked in the middle sold the bottom to the very institutions who understood the bigger picture. In a real financial panic, gold can even get sold hard at first, simply because it is easy to sell and people need cash, right before it turns and runs. This is a case, not a guarantee. It is not personal financial advice. It is a way of thinking about risk. Which is exactly why how you hold matters as much as whether you hold. If you take one practical idea from me today, let it be this: own the metal, not a paper promise that merely tracks the metal. Because the whole lesson of this history is that paper claims are the thing that gets rewritten when the system is under stress. Size your position so that a sharp drop, and there will be sharp drops, can never force you to sell at the worst possible moment. The people who get hurt in gold are almost never the ones who were wrong about the direction. They are the ones who owned it in a form they did not control, or in a size that scared them out at the bottom. Own it calmly. Own it in a form you can hold, and do not let a shakeout separate you from it. Now, here's the part one most want you to hear, the part that I think is the real reason to pay attention right now. We are early, not late, early. Right now, the central banks see it, and they are already positioned. A handful of careful people see it, but the mainstream has not caught on. The pension funds are barely allocated. The financial media still treats gold as a curiosity, a shiny thing for nervous people, a story they run when there's nothing else to talk about. That gap between what the smartest institutional money is quietly doing and what the crowd believes is the whole opportunity. Because here is how these things always resolve. By the time it is obvious, by the time gold leads every news segment and every advisor at every firm is finally recommending it, the easy part of the move will already be behind us. Nobody is going to send you an invitation. That is the hard truth about being early. There is no announcement, no alert, no friendly call from your brokerage telling you the arrangement is being rewritten, and now would be the moment to protect yourself. The whole point of the history I just walked you through is that the people who knew never told the public until it was already done. So the only way to be early is to understand it before the crowd arrives, and decide for yourself while the decision is still calm and cheap. That is not fear talking. That is just how repricings work, every single time. And that is exactly why I want to make you an offer, for those of you who stayed with me all the way to the end, because you are the ones who actually think this way. If you have $100,000 or more in a 401k or an IRA, I would like to sit down with you, one-on-one, in a free educational web conference. No cost, no obligation, no pressure. Just a real conversation about how this history applies to your specific situation and how the precious metals IRA option we discussed actually works for you. To claim it, mention that you watched this video all the way through. And the honest reason to do it now is not some fake deadline. It is that the best time to make a calm decision is precisely when nothing feels urgent, when you are not reacting, when you still have time to think. That window is open right now. Once everyone can see it, it closes. If you are watching on your television, scan the QR code on your screen. If you are on your phone or your computer, go to jeffreedguide.com. So let me answer the question I opened with, the one in the title, honestly and directly. Did the case for a much higher gold price just get stronger? It did, but not for the reason the excited headlines say. It got stronger because the conditions that produce the truly enormous numbers, a monetary arrangement under quiet strain, the institutions who run it moving into metal, the old relationships breaking down, are visibly assembling again, the way they assembled before the last great rewrite. Remember where we started. The biggest targets in history never came from a good year. They came from the morning the world admitted the old system no longer worked, and everything got repriced against the one thing that could not be printed. That morning has come before. The people watching for it were not the ones who were surprised. Be one of the people who was not surprised.